right, I'm just going to start by setting up the conversation, and then we are going to hear from Cecilia. So thanks everyone for joining us. My name is Gayatri Shah, and I'm a journalist and a columnist for the Hindu Weekend. We're live on Instagram to talk about the future of luxury retail at a time when the world has been upended in unprecedented ways. We're charting new ways of living and being. It makes for a great film, except, of course, we're living it. Never before has our interconnected, globalized world been brought to such a screeching halt. While the world has struggled with other crises, wars and other epidemics, the coronavirus pandemic has really put a lockdown on 2.2 billion people and around the world. We are facing a black swan with economies across the world in free fall. Anxiety and uncertainty loom large. For high-end fashion and retail in particular, the pandemic poses a perfect storm. That's how the luxury goods analyst Luca Solca described this time in a podcast with the Business of Fashion, and it really stuck with me, that term. He says that the first half of this year is the worst in the history of the luxury goods industry. It's engulfed by negative forces in the form of extended store closings, brands struggling to pay bills, supply chain disruptions with factories being shut, and of course, declining consumer sentiment. The other issue, of course, is that fashion is a global business, but this crisis has raised the specter of anti-globalization once again. Governments around the world are embracing protectionist trade policies, borders are shut down. Trade isolationism could result in an economic iron curtain, which is exactly the opposite of the way the fashion industry is currently set up. This evening, we're going to discuss the future of fashion and retail in this time of crisis. Global fashion is a $2.5 trillion industry. In India, the textile industry employs between 45 and 60 million people and contributes 5% to our GDP. Textile exports are vital for our economic well-being as well. McKinsey's State of Fashion 2020 annual report estimates that luxury fashion will see a fall in revenues of about 39%. Average market capitalization for apparel and luxury players has dropped 40% in the first quarter of this year, much more so than the overall stock market. Spending money on non-essential items has obviously declined. In the US, clothing and accessory sales dropped by 50% in March alone. Of course, there are some who say that once this period is over, people will let loose and spend away. This was a phenomenon that the US experienced immediately after 9/11. And of course, we saw what happened in China when the Hermes store reopened. The store pulled in $2.7 million in sales in one day. That type of revenge buying is a retailer's dream, but is it realistic? In this COVID era, how will global fashion and retail recalibrate? What will consumers in India do when the lockdown is over? The government recently reversed its e-commerce policy to include essential sale items only, landing a blow to clothing retailers who are hoping to restart their businesses. It is unlikely that large gatherings and events will take place in the foreseeable future, which means the lucrative wedding market will suffer. Occasion wear is obviously a big part of luxury sales in this country, and that is not likely to bounce back soon. Here to talk to us about all this and more is Cecilia Morelli, the co-founder of India's first concept store, Le Mill, now in its 10th year. She's here to tell us about the future of her business, as well as others like hers, and what the way forward may be. So hi, Cecilia. I bet you never imagined that you would be marking 10 years of Le Mill like this.
Yes, we didn't think that we'd spend the first 2 months of our 10th year in shut, basically. Yeah. That wasn't really our objective. That being said, I think we've really risen to the occasion. I'm really proud of how the team has responded, and we've learned a lot about ourselves, and we've sort of adapted a lot. And I know that that's some of the stuff that we're going to talk about today.
So before I begin and get into the meat of this conversation, I just wanted to ask you: are you all doing okay? Where are you isolating? And I you have family in Europe, and it must be an extraordinarily stressful time for you in particular. So tell us a little bit about that.
Thanks for asking. So I'm actually at my husband's parents' home in Alibag. We were very fortunate that we'd actually come here before the lockdown to isolate because I had returned from Europe, actually from Fashion Week, pretty much, and we had to. In Paris, yeah, correct. In Paris, and then I had actually been to my business partner's home in Morocco, but we wanted to isolate and quarantine, and so we came here, which seemed like just the easiest place to quarantine, safest in terms of infecting other people, and obviously being away from everyone. And then the lockdown happened, and so we were here. So I've also been living out of the same very small suitcase with the same 6 clothes for the last 6 weeks, which is a first for me. So that's been quite interesting and fun. It's amazing how many combinations of tops and skirts you can really live with.
That doesn't really bode well for your business, though. So
well, you know, I'm going to push separates as a great investment. No, I'm actually aching for my clothes. I'm going to be honest. I'm in my 6th week of wearing really the same thing over and over. It's a bit difficult. So one of
and my capsule wardrobe.
I just saw Pooja just said that. It's cute. Yes, and my family, my mother is completely alone and totally isolated in Paris. She's 70 and she basically has left her apartment 4 times in the last 7 weeks now. My whole family was isolating very early on because my sister is a doctor in the UK and she had sort of, you know, read the tea leaves, as it were, and was very nervous about COVID for a long time. And she had actually forced my mother into isolation very early on. And my father is in Rome, where he's with my 94-year-old grandmother. I mean, actually, I'm happy to say that there are now less cases in Rome than there are in Bombay. So I'm feeling good about him.
Those countries
it's on the bed.
Ahead. Those countries were ahead of us in terms of where they are in the crisis. So.
They were. That is correct. Although I'm obviously, you know, London is not good, and my sister's working in a COVID-only clinic and hospital, and so she's very exposed. But she's doing what she trained to do and what she loves to do. So we're just all praying that she's going to be okay.
But yes, let's all hope that everyone is okay and we come out of this on the other side better, stronger, and healthier.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let me start then by asking you, Cece, you know, Le Mill and stores like it are a wonderful place to experience new brands. And of course, the store has done so much to bring the best of global fashion to India. These kinds of stores are tactile. They are, they're venues for meeting each other. They're communal. You held some great events there. And basically, they're a wonderful way to enhance the experiential aspect of fashion shopping. Now, all of that is sort of out of the window.
That's correct, yeah.
Tell us a little bit about the business implications for stores, like yours.
Right. So I think there's sort of 2 phases, really. How we cope with the shutdown and what we do during the shutdown. And then I think there's the idea of this kind of new normal, right? So, currently in shutdown, first of all, we can't deliver to people because the Indian government is not allowing onlines to deliver non-essential items in an effort to control the pandemic, which I actually completely understand. So in that time, what we've really done is we've just brought a lot of the lifestyle content that we would normally do in the store, and we've just amplified it on our social media. So we've always been very active on Instagram, and what we decided to do was, for example, in April, for years now, we've made it our healthy month, and we always have a lot of health content in April. So from markets with healthy food to conversations between health experts that we normally stage at the store, and all we've done really is we've just transferred and multiplied those on our social media platform. And I think that was a really a good thing that we did, and something that we really actually now want to continue doing, because as we enter this sort of new normal, I think you're right. In the past, stores like ours have been a place for people to connect, people to stage, events like book launches or, in-person meets with designers. But I really believe that we can now bring those connections and those experiences online by harnessing social media in particular to foster those kind of conversations and connections and others. So what I keep on telling my team right now is, don't worry about selling. Let's just think about who we are as a brand, who we are as a community. Let's listen to our customers and understand what their interests are and how we can cater to those interests. And I believe in the long term, that's how we can really hopefully keep our customers and keep them engaged, so that when they're ready, when the economy is ready, they'll come back to us. That's what we're trying to do anyways. I hope that's...
So consumer engagement, and I totally take your point about social media. We're seeing that across a whole bunch of brands as well that are trying to keep consumers engaged. I think a friend of mine, Ambika, sent me a piece on how brands that talk about making masks, fashion brands, luxury fashion brands, are having more consumer engagement than those who don't mention the pandemic at all. But, on the flip side is that maybe... there are certain brands that can afford that, certain retail stores who can afford to do that, talking about the long term, as you mentioned. But obviously, there are many that are unable to cope. So I wanted to ask you a little bit about that, because obviously e-commerce at some point will open up.
Yes.
It's just a matter of time.
That's correct.
Historically, luxury fashion brands have not been very enterprising when it comes to digital. In fact, they've had a lot of reluctance, and we know all about Chanel, as a great example in the West.
I think what's going to happen is that in 2020 or 2021, 25% of sales are going to be done online rather than in physical retail. And I think that number is just going to continue to rise. I definitely see that there is no future for any luxury brand or any company or store that doesn't go online. That's just a fact.
So, Cici, here I'm going to ask, because I'm getting some questions. One is that there are a plethora of small designers for whom exhibitions and live sales, these bazaars that happen in India is really the only platform for them to sell. What do small brands like that do? That's one question. And the other question I have to you specifically is around how you would manage deliveries on e-commerce. Because
I saw that was one of the questions. Yeah,
the back end is so important.
Back end is super important, and it's one of the reasons that we didn't do it for a long time, as we weren't really satisfied with some of the agents or companies that we could partner with. So listen, to your first point on small designers in India. So one of our commitments online is that 30% of our business online will be domestic brands, okay? And today they only represent about 10% of what we do in store, and that's because there's a lot of other really great stores who do a really good job of selling Indian brands, and we just didn't think that in a brick and mortar format there was really a need for it. But as we shift online, we're right now deeply in conversation with all of our domestic brands, plus more who we weren't in a position to sell before, to now bring them online. So I hope that, I've never been a big fan of these mailers, I'll be honest with you. And one of my reasons is that I think that it's unhealthy for consumerism to have these binges. The mailers on, these exhibitions are on, everybody buys, and then the brand can't do anything for 4 months until the next time. And I think from a cash flow perspective, that's really unhealthy, because suddenly you've got lots of money and then you don't have any money, and it doesn't really allow a brand to get onto some kind of form of a calendar, so that they're designing for specific deliveries and they're aiming to, say, deliver twice a year, for example, and have those collections be in stores, reach a large amount of people, get the feedback from the retailers as to how that's doing. So I really hope in some way that the website that we're building anyways can sort of help. Let me be very clear also that we will never get into bridal or Indian wear, because it's just not our space. I think that Tina does an amazing job of that, and it's just not our space.
Of ensemble.
Of ensemble, yes. So we will be representing Indian designers doing Western wear, and we really hope that we can give them a platform where they can get feedback, where we can help them organize themselves so that they're delivering on these international calendars. In terms of what we're doing in terms of deliveries is we've actually partnered with, and I know I'm going to say it wrong, I think it's Skyrocket, and they're a really, really good logistics partner, and we're really happy with all of our meetings with them, and they are coming on board to help us. They're very good with the last mile. So, your Blue Darts and DHL, who we've used internationally always, are good, but they're not as good with the last mile. And Skyrocket is really good for that. So I'm not worried about deliveries. I think that we'll manage that well, actually.
And what about things like, trying, that's another question that's come in right now, is trying clothes or whatever. I mean, Net-a-Porter does an amazing job in some of the very big markets that they have, like London and New York and Hong Kong, where they basically, send it to you and then the next day they'll come and pick it up. But that's expensive.
So that is expensive. So we thought about that.
There is an argument to be made about the fact that when you're plonking down a big chunk of change on an item, you do want to try it on physically. I don't think the Indian consumer is there yet in terms of spending those kinds of money on
I agree with that.
Online purchase.
I completely agree with that, and I think that the average ticket size online will be less than it is in the brick and mortar store. I don't think that change in India is happening for a while. Now, on the trials, so like all websites, we will offer an opportunity for the customer to try and return within 15 days. And we'll have a very, very easy setup where we'll give you a return box as well as a label that's already printed and instructions. And we've invested in technology that will basically puncture the clothes in a way that doesn't spoil them, just as Net-a-Porter does, so that the tag is sort of visible on the sleeve or visible on the skirt in such a way that you couldn't wear the skirt and then not have someone notice that tag. And so if that tag is present on the garment when you return it, we will of course take we'll take the garment and refund you the full amount. So that's one thing that we're doing. And then in the metropolises, so in Delhi and Bombay already, we've already got a team in Delhi and in Bombay. We will actually basically be doing a sort of butler service where someone will bring you the clothes and you will book the time slot during which time he will come. The person will wait up to 2 hours, which will give you the time to try the garments on and then return whatever you don't want and keep whatever you want. So that service, that butler service, will be available in Delhi and Bombay.
Right. Okay.
And then hopefully other cities.
So another question, and I have this on my list, and I see that Gayatri R has asked.
I just saw that,
question, is, has your buying changed? Because as we know, the wedding market is probably, occasion dressing in India is definitely going to be depressed. So have you thought about that? And
of course.
So what are you looking to instead?
So two things. I mean, the first is that obviously, the fashion week I just came back from was fall winter 20. So it's what theoretically is in our stores between September and December. Now, I personally do not think that we are going back to anything close to before for 18 to 24 months. So what we did is we went back and looked at all of our buys, and we basically cancelled most of what we would call our sort of opulent dressing, okay? So what I believe is that today people are going to be looking for investment pieces, so a handbag, a really great jacket, a good pair of pants, something that they feel that they're going to use for 5, 6, 7 years. I think that we as a society are going to move away from, I buy it once, I click my picture, it's on Instagram, I can't wear it anymore. I don't think that that's going to happen, certainly not for the next 24 months.
And that was already sort of taking place, right? And
yes.
With the movement towards sustainability.
Exactly, and it's something that we personally felt really strongly about, and that we've been talking about with our partnership with Gunj in January, and I think that trend is happening, and so I don't think that we're not going to, I think an amazing halpern dress is something you can wear to a dinner party at a friend's house where there are a few people and you're respecting some form of social distancing even come the fall. But then I think it's something that's so special that you're just going to have it for many years and wear it repeatedly. I just don't know that we're going to have gowns anymore. I don't think that we're going to have so many sequin pieces anymore.
And, there was this question about, and I had this too, about the fact that right now consumer sentiment is so depressed. In many cases, people don't even know if they're going to have a paycheck, let alone everything. Now, your customer is but you still have people who are aspirational and come in and everyone is concerned about this. So how do luxury retailers think about stimulating demand? I mean, China with the Hermes store was a one-off, but I don't think that's going to be happening.
No, not at all. A lot of people forwarded me that article, and I was very skeptical. My friends who work in luxury in Europe are saying, simply that the consumption at all, and what they're really seeing is, less than 80% return to normal. And that's for a good brand. And they're also really seeing these safe buys. Listen, this is what I hoped, and I know that Imran Ahmed of BOF is really invested in this conversation, and some of our designer friends as well. I hope that we can move to a model that's sustainable for a business like ours, so that we can continue to grow and continue to employ lots of people here in India, and support local brands. What I hope is that we can have a system where we have less deliveries, less discounting, because the discounting is I think the catch 22. Is that the expression? I'm really bad with expressions, but so is the issue is you have to buy a lot to sell only a certain percentage to then discount a whole bunch in order to make your money back. Now that just doesn't make sense.
That's not a sustainable model. Yeah,
it's not sustainable, and it came out of the 2008 crisis when department stores in America, and I was there working in America at a department store, and I saw it happening, discounted so heavily to ensure that they had the right cash flows. And as a result, we got into this cycle of produce more but discount lots. And I think that is not sustainable, it's not smart, and I really hope that we can get out of that. And let me tell you one thing, which is that a lot of brands are basically skipping a season this year. So we're getting a lot of emails that Resort 21 will be cancelled as a season completely. And I think there's going to be a move towards, having less on the shelves, but also not discounting every 3 months or 4 months or even 6 months, giving people an opportunity to see these clothes not as just something they should wear and toss, but something they should keep for a long time. So that's really my hope for the future. And I think that we as a brand are really trying to turn to those brands within our shop that really do that are looking to sustain that. So Sanara is a great example of that. They only have a very small percentage of what they produce that goes on sale. And frankly, they have this killer jacket that's been there in their offering for 10 years that's never changed. And there's no reason for that jacket not to be sold every season to a new customer.
So I have a couple of questions on sustainability and pollution, which have come through on this. But before I get into that, I also wanted to talk to you about this whole notion of resale. There's a company in the middle of this entire pandemic. There's a company that's managed to raise $62 million in a fundraising round now, because they do fashion resale.
Yeah.
And obviously the sustainable lobby is sort of gung ho about that space.
Yeah.
I wanted to talk to you about that because is that something that you would consider, that you would think about?
We have actually considered it, Julie and I together, and it's not something we're close to. It's something we felt that India was not ready for, if I'm honest. I think that we're in a different point in the in the sort of life cycle of luxury.
There are a few small companies operating in Bombay that I'm aware of.
That
Pre-loved and vintage that are exactly. So
and we're looking at that market really, really closely. And I think that, like I said, we actually did a whole study. Julie did a very, very in-depth study. In fact, she knows some of the people at Vistya Collective. We had calls with them. And I'm just going to say that we're first launching our website, and it is absolutely possible that eventually we would also have a section dedicated to that sort of product. Because yes, from a sustainability point of view, it's really important, and that is something that we care about immensely.
Right. I mean, Rosella, my editor, is saying that the Selfridges in London has a pop-up late last year for pre-loved.
Selfridges is amazing stuff. Yeah,
and millennials, of course, the younger generation are much more open to this, right? Because they're
And let me just add quickly that it's also strategic, right? Because one of the issues, our businesses have had is what to do with all that stock at the end of the season, right? So, I can't sell at minus 90% off because it's just, it's not beneficial to the brand, it's not beneficial to the image, but you always have, therefore, some stock left at the end of the season. And so one of the things Selfridges has done is they're saying it's pre-loved, they're saying it's vintage. Actually, in a lot of cases, it's the end stock that's actually coming from retailers across the country, in that case, Selfridges. I mean, I don't think I know. So it's also strategic, and they're trying to get rid of this end cycle problem, which is a problem in our industry, and which I hope in some ways this sort of maybe less deliveries, less product will also help to resolve.
Is that like the Farfetch model, and I think Farfetch is actually poised for quite a lot of growth, I think, in this COVID world. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, I think, Farfetch is a company that we were associated with for 5 years, and I think it's an incredible company. They don't do so much pre-loved or pre-sold or end of market. What they do mostly actually is they really enable small boutique stores, in particular in Italy, to sell their clothes all over the world. Right.
So they're providing access to a bigger market, to a global market.
To global market, and also to buyers in those boutiques in Italy, for example, who are selecting really wonderful one-off pieces that you may not get in Selfridges because it's a department store. And when you buy for a department store, you buy for that need. Right? And I know you and I talked about that. But that small store in, in Molise, in a random place in Italy, that woman has an eye, and she selected that one piece from the runway that nobody else ordered, and you can get it that way. That, I think, is the genius of Farfetch.
Right. Okay. Now, if we could just speak, because I know we're going to be running out of time soon, is about fashion and, this whole conversation around pollution and sustainability, and whether a retailer like you or retailers like you are pushing back on some of the luxury brands, because as we know, fashion is one of the most polluting industries in the world.
Yeah. There's no question about that. Now, I might say in the defense of, luxury that it's better than fast fashion, but it's still terrible. And we think about that all the time. Look, there's two sides to this coin. On the one hand, fashion is a massive employer, right? And you said that in your introduction. And so I don't know that the solution is just to stop everything, because that means, not employing people from Bangladesh to India to Italy to, all of those places. So that said, when we now look at bringing on a new brand, we look at their sustainability, I think, mandate, that, what are they doing about sustainability? How are they dying? Dying is a massive polluter.
Right.
And, we're really looking at all of those things, and we're assessing that before we bring on new brands. And actually, I have to say, I think Kering has done a really good job of this, better than LVMH. And we do associate a lot with Kering, and I think it's really fantastic. I mean, one of the things actually that kills me, I'll be honest, is the plastic that goes around wrapping clothes when they come to us. And we're constantly telling people, using the excuse of the single-use plastic ban in Bombay, and we're telling our brands and our partners, please don't wrap these clothes in plastic. That is a first
basic thing I think these brands could do already
but
to help.
But now, Cece, in this COVID era, when you're going to have to prove, I guess, that to your customers that the products that they're receiving are hygienic and all the rest of it, I actually wonder if that is going to be turned on its head.
But why do you have to use plastic? I mean, we have cloth covers, for example, that are just as good a barrier. No, so what we think, I mean, look, a cloth bag protects your clothing just as much as the plastic does. And the truth is, what's really important is that everybody who's packing our clothes is wearing a mask and gloves, that those masks are themselves not reused, that they're used once a day. And in this respect, I've taken a lot of advice from my sister and other doctor friends. And so even before we shut down, we had introduced some sanitation policies in the store. So yes, I think if the person who's packing your clothes is wearing a mask and is wearing gloves and is steaming your clothes correctly, they don't have to then put it inside a plastic container. They can put it in a cloth bag and it's going to be just as hygienic.
Right. Okay. And just very quickly, someone is asking about, looks like Ginger Tales, or someone is asking about sustainability, your tie-up with Goonj. If you could talk briefly about that. We've got another question from Ashok on, sort of an EMI model. Would you consider buy now and pay later, or even an installment plan to stimulate demand?
100%. Yeah, I think India, I read some interesting number, I can't remember it exactly, it was from Deepak Parikh, where he talked, I think it was that, essentially that Indians borrow only 12% of their GDP or something, where in China it's 40% and America is 80%. And so there's obviously enormous growth there and potential, and I think that's going to be really important when we go back to work. EMI is absolutely something we're already talking to both of our banks about, especially as we go online. In the store, we know our customers so well that in a sense, we already practice EMI just in a very informal way.
You offer credit.
We do. We offer credit to our friends, and I mean, all of our clients at this point are our friends, and we're really lucky that we have that community. So absolutely, we're now looking at how we can formalize that in when we go online. In terms of Goonj, I just wanted for a really long time to do something. Like I said before, I didn't really feel yet that, anyways, our customers in the physical store, and I think this will change when we go online, was ready for this vintage or pre-loved. But we thought that if we partner with Goonj and encourage our clients who have so many clothes and maybe excess, and I know that, Gayatri, you've been cleaning your cupboard recently and have found lots of extra clothes, and we encouraged them to give them to Goonj because we thought what Goonj was doing with those clothes was so amazing. And not only are they employing people, but they're finding new ways to reuse those clothes, whether it's making backpacks.
They're repurposing them.
They're repurposing them, and we thought that was really fantastic.